And at a time of soaring tensions in the Middle East, Iran says its military is keeping the peace, not threatening it. Nevertheless, Tehran was not shy about showing off its firepower. Iran does it every year to mark National Army Day. President Hassan Roughani also slammed the Saudi-led airstrikes against Shiite rebels in Yemen, saying they oppressed innocent people. CNN's Frederik Pleitgen is in Tehran, and he was there for today's parade. He joins us now with the latest. And Fred, despite Iran saying its army is only used for peacekeeping, they are offering support to rebels in Yemen, and this, of course, is increasing tensions with Saudi Arabia.
Well, the Iranians, Lynda, are saying that they haven't given any weapons to the Houthi rebels there in that conflict in Yemen. However, of course, the Americans on the Saudis say something very different. Secretary of State John Kerry specifically said that he believed that the Iranians had provided weapons to the Houthi rebels. The Iranians, for their part, are saying what they're doing is humanitarian assistance. They also, as you said, have heavily criticized the Saudis for that bombing campaign. One of the things that happened just last week was that Iranian boats all of a sudden turned up in the waters near the coast of Yemen, and that's certainly something that is very delicate in that standoff that's going on between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And right now those tensions are becoming more profound. What we've seen is that the Iranian government has come up with what it calls a 4-point peace plan. However, there's also that very heavy criticism that you mentioned of Hassan Rouhani, heavily criticizing the Saudi government, saying that they would gain nothing from what they're doing right now in Yemen. So certainly this is something that does bear a lot of tension, and certainly those tensions are even more profound on a day like this, where, as you said, the Iranians very much showing off their military might, Lynda.
And Fred, talk to us about some of the equipment they had on display. I understand some of it was made at home quite recently, and there was talk of a robotic type of piece of equipment that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. The Iranians actually have quite a large military industrial sector where they produce their own goods. One of the things that was on display today was a rolling robot, if you will, with two launchers on the back. It's unclear how well this piece of equipment works. It was actually towed by a truck when it was brought across the stage where the VIPs were sitting. However, there were some other new pieces of equipment that we haven't seen in the past as well. There was one that appeared to be sort of a mix between a tank and an armored personnel carrier. They labeled it as an 8-wheel tank. There were also new missiles, new bombs that were on display as well. A lot of what the Iranians produce, of course, is by far not as sophisticated as, for instance, the weaponry that's produced by the United States or by Russia or by Germany, for that matter. But they do have quite a substantial military industrial complex that they are also very proud of. However, we always have to emphasize that the real strength of the Iranian military really lies in its personnel. It is one of the most disciplined, one of the most motivated fighting forces in the world. And certainly if you look at the elite Revolutionary Guard Corps, that is certainly a force that is very, very powerful and really makes Iran one of the most powerful militaries in the entire Middle East, Lynda.
And Fred, speaking of Russia, it will lift its ban on selling surface-to-air missiles to Iran, and we know a UN ban has been in place since 2010. The Pentagon, of course, as you'd expect, is not pleased with that, is it?
No, absolutely not pleased, especially because these weapons are not just anti-aircraft weapons. They're also very sophisticated. They come from a model that was actually introduced in 1979, but has been vastly improved since then. They're called the S-300, and they're also weapons that are capable of intercepting fighters at very high altitudes. And that certainly is something when we keep talking about the potential for the United States or for Israel, for instance, to try and bomb nuclear facilities. That is certainly something that could potentially be inhibited by all that. Now, of course, we have to keep in mind that the generation of fighter jets that both the U.S. and Israel fly are also very sophisticated and do have countermeasures against rockets that would be fired at them. But certainly this does or would give Iran a whole new dimension of surface-to-air missile technology and would greatly increase their air defenses. And one of the things that, of course, also weighs heavily, you can tell this on the Americans, is that this comes at a time when the sanctions actually haven't officially been lifted yet. And so this is something where not only is Russia offering military technology to Iran, it also is something that seems to, at least in a certain sense, break up the international alliance of the countries that have the sanctions. The Germans, for instance, came out and said that they were quite critical of the Russian move because they believe that all the countries should relieve all those sanctions together when they do so.
Okay, well, we'll be watching that closely. Fred Pleitgen, as always, thank you very much. We appreciate that report.